Council today. We have Councilmember Newell, Councilmember Harrison, Councilmember Freeman, Councilmember Stallings, and Councilmember Lockhart. We welcome all of you. We're glad you're here. Glad for all of our staff who is with us today and all of our residents who are here today too to participate. I've asked Councilmember Newell if she'll offer an invocation.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful we're able to be here together today as a council and be able to work together for this great city of Lehi that we live in. Heavenly Father, we ask at this time to bless our residents with a special blessing on our first responders and our public safety, that they can be kept safe from harm and be able to have thy guidance and inspiration with them as they keep us safe and keep our city, the amazing city that we all love to live in. Please be with us today as we counsel with each other, that we can listen and have an empathetic heart and be able to listen to our residents and make decisions that would have the best impact on our city. Again, Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for this opportunity that we have, and we say these things in Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. Our first item of business, number 2.1, is the annual audit report from the Finance Department. So we'll turn some time over to Dean.
Yeah, so every year we have an audit, and Dana has come here many times, but most of you don't know her because you're new. So I'm going to introduce Dana Howell. She's with Osborne, Robbins, Bueller, and she's been our auditor for a little while, and she does a great job for us. And more important, she may be the #1 Seahawks fan in the state of Utah. So.
Number 2. Oh my gosh, what a fun weekend. Yes?
Oh, my boys just went to the game on Sunday.
So cool.
They love the Seahawks.
I might have been on their plane. There were definitely a few people on the plane. So
Let's go.
It was so much fun. I'll try to. I didn't wear a jersey. I figured I'd try and be a little bit professional. A little. So you guys have received a lot of information, I know, and if you're new to this, it's probably like, what in the world? So I was told to come give you a quiz. Not really. The first thing I wanted to do is point out in this big book, the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report, on page 14, it is our report on the financial statements. And it's long, but basically what it's saying is that we've audited the financial statements and that we have concluded that they're materially correct in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. That just means we're looking for the proper accounting treatment of things and such. It does not mean that we're testing internal controls. We're not issuing any kind of a report on internal controls. It's not designed to search out or find fraud or illegal acts or things like that. We're really just doing tests to make sure that the financial statements are accurate in accordance with what we call GAAP. And we were. It's a clean opinion. There's no findings in that opinion. Like I say, it's on page 14, and it goes over to page 16. And then the next section of this document, it's called Management's Discussion and Analysis, and it just has a lot of summary financial information. It has summarized financial statements, and then also just some bullet points that you can look at for different things that are kind of high points that we pulled out. Those highlights are on page 17, and I don't know if we want to read any of them in particular, or if you have, maybe I could just pause, and if you have any questions at this point, or we could go over more detail, whatever any of you think.
So I haven't read through the whole thing yet. I'm about halfway through, and I did notice that there was like a finding of sort, but it wasn't major.
Okay, that might be in the other report.
The other reports,
yeah.
okay.
So maybe we could move on from the financial statements. I mean, and there's nothing. I guess the only other thing I would mention in the financial statements, there's a lot of detail, and it's kind of interesting to report to you in January when these are as of June 30th. So it's kind of old news, right? You know, if there was some budget problem or some cash flow problem or something, it would be long addressed. And so the only other thing I would mention in here is that there were no variances, there was no expenditures in excess of budget that you would see in these financial statements. That would actually get reported on elsewhere too in these other reports, but that's just one other thing I thought I would mention. So to address your question, we have a packet here. It looks like this is the single audit packet. And this has to do with when you get federal funds over you spend federal funds over $750,000, we have to report to the federal government and do what they call a single audit. And they call it a single audit because you do it kind of at the same time you're doing the financial audit. And basically what we have to do is we have to go through several steps and figure out what your major programs are, so the programs that you spent the most money on. The last several years, all of that has related to COVID money, when they just started throwing COVID money at you guys to be able to spend away. And so the biggest programs for that were the pressurized irrigation meter installation, and then also, it's escaping me, the well? Yeah, the flight park well. The flight park well. So we had to do testing on those projects, and we have certain things we have to do, checklists and whatnot to do. So we do all that, and as part of a government audit, there's this single audit, and we issue reports on that. We had no findings on that at all this year, as far as specifically related to the federal grants. But on a more general level, on page 1 of this single audit package, we do a report on internal control over financial reporting. And in connection with that, it just describes what we do, the responsibilities we have for learning about your internal controls and for making sure we can see that they're in place. But again, we're not testing them. We don't opine on them at all. And then we also do the same kind of thing for compliance. And so compliance with these federal grants and also compliance with a bunch of state matters, which we can go into in a minute. With regard to the internal control over financial reporting, we did write up a finding that we referred to on page, let's see. Sorry, I should have had that. So it's actually on page 9. It's the next to the last page. And we refer to it as a significant deficiency in internal control, but that sounds so much worse than it really is. It's just professional language that we are required to refer to. And what happened is we ended up with quite a few audit adjustments. So at the beginning of the audit, the finance department gives us what we call a trial balance. It's basically the financial statements in unadjusted format. And as we go through and do our thing, we will find adjustments. And we always know we're going to find adjustments because a lot of it is really kind of work in process as we get going on the audit. This year, we just happened to have some that were larger, and based on some calculations we do in our work and these professional standards and how they dictate what we have to report on, some of the adjustments exceeded a threshold where we had to report on it this way. It's not abnormal. It's not like there's some big breakdown in internal control or anything. So I don't know if you have any other specific questions, but that's basically the gist of it, just kind of year-end close. And I mean, I guess I would elaborate a little more. All of the adjustments relate to timing issues, like when is payroll recorded, the last payroll of the year, is it recorded in fiscal year 2025 or did it get pushed into 2026? We might have to shift it around. Or inventory, same way with the PI meters. Maybe they got counted, everything was there was nothing missing. Did it get counted in the financial statements as inventory or as work in process in that project? You know, it's really just timing and kind of where it's recognized in the financial statements. It's not like there was all of a sudden, you know, anything missing or any real errors in terms of we can't figure out something or whatever. So it sounds not great, but it's really just not a big deal. It's very normal. So that's pretty much where I would put it. But if you have questions, fire away. No?
That answers mine.
Okay. So that's basically the single audit. That's this single audit package. And also in connection with this gets combined with the big comprehensive annual financial report in a digital format and gets submitted electronically to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse. And so that's how it all gets reported to the federal government. And that's just all done and caught up and everything's completed for this fiscal year. I mentioned briefly the state compliance. There's a shorter letter. It might have a header. I can't remember what yours looks like, but it's a letter about state compliance. And the city is subject to, we get an audit guide from the state auditor's office saying, test this, that, and the other thing to make sure the city's in compliance. And so we did that. And this year we had to test your budgetary compliance. Like I say, there's nothing over budget. We test fund balance things, the justice court, some controls and things like that on them. We look at restricted taxes and some revenues. I think you guys wouldn't have seen the fraud risk assessment yet, but there's a checklist kind of thing that Dean goes through with everybody at the end of the year about risks and how the city is addressing them. Do you want to explain that a little?
Yeah, so we do that every year, but we do it in June. So we did it last June, and we'll do it this June with this council for that year.
And so you're in compliance with that. That's just one of the things we had to look at. And then also some information about fees. And in all of those things, we had no findings. Everything was great. So really, there's nothing to really share or report on that unless you do have any questions. I'll pause on that one. No? Okay. And then the last letter I have to share, it's just a basic letter. We call it Letter to Those Charged with Governance, which is you guys. And it's really just this boilerplate letter. We have to communicate about certain things. The first part is about accounting policies. There were no new accounting policies adopted for this year. Well, no, there was one. There was a change in how we had to account for compensated absences, meaning PTO and time off. There wasn't a significant effect on the financial statements on that. And then there's just some other things, like if we had had any difficulties encountered in the audit, we would report it, but we didn't. We do mention that we made adjustments, but that management's posted all of them. They've approved them. We didn't have any disagreements. There were just really nothing else to report. It's very boilerplate. The other audit findings and issues does refer to the single audit letter that we just discussed, talking about the adjustments that we made as part of the audit. So really it's pretty dull, and dull is good. So, that's really all I have, unless you want me to tear into anything in more detail. Okay.
Any other questions? Council's good.
I would pause one sec, because I should say that it's really a pleasure to work with these guys. You don't know it yet. A lot of you don't know it yet, but Dean and Karma and Allison are fantastic. It's like the great gift of clients. Not all clients are made the same. And these guys are awesome. So it's really just a privilege for us to work with everybody here, and everybody's so cooperative and helpful. It's really awesome.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Dean, any closing comments after that?
No, we appreciate working with them. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to 2.2, presentation of citizen survival results, the Y2 analytics.
For about 10 years now, we've been partnered with Y2 Analytics to conduct a citizen survey annually. That went out this January, and so Kyrene here she's going to give us our results and kind of walk us through what that looks like.
All right, and assuming technology is still cooperating with us. Oh no. Let me try again. Okay, great. I love it when things work. All right, so as Mariah mentioned, we've been conducting this resident survey for several years now. We have some of the data illustrated over time in this presentation, just the last 5 years for ease of legibility, frankly. But digging in with a few initial findings first and sort of the highlights here. Overall, we find that residents are quite happy with their quality of life in the city of Lehi. We have seen some fluctuations over time, but in total, we have 78% of residents who currently say that they would recommend the city as a great place to live. And the average quality of life rating on a 0 to 100 scale is 75. That's pretty consistent with what we've seen over time. Overall trust and approval in elected officials has also trended downward a little bit. This, I will say, is common across many of the cities we work with up and down the Wasatch Front. I think it's more of an expression of attitude towards government in general than Lehi uniquely, but that is something that we want to keep eyes on moving forward. When we ask residents what they see as top issues or concerns in the city right now and looking towards the future, growth and the impacts of growth continue to be top of mind for residents. Infrastructure primarily. When we look at some of the direct impacts or pain points that residents are expressing, we find that rush hour traffic is becoming an increasingly large concern for residents, while road conditions are less of a concern. So definitely some clear tension there just in terms of overall capacity of Lehi City streets. Probably not a surprise to any of you. We also ask residents to evaluate a series of city services. Most of those city services tested above 50 on that 0 to 100 scale. We have 9 of our 22, so just shy of half, receiving scores above 70 on that 0 to 100 scale. And power services were added to the list this year, and residents are quite happy with the city's power provision, at a 79 out of 100. And then looking at residents' communication preferences, overall, residents are inclined towards email communication. I will say there's a little bit of a bias here because we are conducting an online survey. Residents are receiving the invitations online, so we certainly wouldn't recommend that the city move fully away from print media and other opportunities to reach out to residents, but there does seem to be an opportunity to increase the city's level of communication and connection to residents through email channels. And then some of the topics that residents are most interested in hearing about include construction or traffic updates, utility interruptions, or parks, library, arts services, and emergency alerts. A quick look at survey methodology before we get into the meat of things a little bit further. You can see here that map of resident distribution. We have a good sample of residents who responded to the survey throughout the city. They have been grouped into regions here that we've used to sort of dissect things over time. In the interest of time, I'm going to breeze past most of those comparisons, but this full presentation will be shared with all of you after this meeting, and we're, of course, happy to respond to any follow-up questions or comments. The survey this year was in the field for about a week, from January 5th to the 12th, and we had an excellent response rate for our panel refresh year. So we do a little bit of statistical overkill on years where we're looking to refresh that panel, make sure that we have a good, broad representative group of residents who are responding to this survey, so that in subsequent years we can go back to that panel and have a representative, healthy response rate continuing forward. And all of these responses have been weighted to reflect the demographics of the city as a whole in regards to age, gender, home ownership rates in the city.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question about that? Yeah. I'm just wondering about, so are the residents randomly selected? It goes to the emails. Do they have a unique code that's assigned to them so they can't then share that survey out and have it accounted?
They receive individual single-use survey links.
Okay.
Yes.
And Mr. Mayor, if I can, just a couple questions. I think the timing of this was interesting. I got some feedback from residents, especially around the elected officials part, because we had already obviously taken office. So they're confused. Are we talking about the old council? So I don't know if the timing is set, because I think this will be a recurring thing for years to come, right?
Yeah, and again, there's probably little tweaks like that we could make. It was just, we didn't send it out at Christmas time. We thought January might get a better response rate, so.
Yeah, and I guess if for the future, if we were to do it in the summer or something like that, would that maybe be more effective, just because people know their elected officials a little better at that point?
We have done it in the summer in the past, but then people don't remember their snowplow score. So we've tried to mix it up in the past, because whatever's most recent is kind of top of mind.
Okay.
So I wouldn't take it personally. I think this probably more reflects the previous officials. You guys haven't really voted on anything yet. So yeah, so I wouldn't take it too personally.
And then how are the questions organized? Is that okay?
She could probably answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll speak to a few of those points just briefly. So we have, over the past 5 years, held the survey during the same January-February window to maintain that level of consistency. Prior to that, it did sort of fluctuate when the survey was fielded. Again, keeping things sort of consistent so that we're looking at apples to apples comparisons of what was top of mind and where residents might be experiencing some pain points is really valuable. So we would discourage moving the fielding period around again without that sort of asterisk if we chose to field the survey at a different time next year. Summer happens to be a particularly difficult time to gather responses from residents. We sort of see people check out when school is out of session through much of the Wasatch Front. So we could look at a later in the spring fielding or a fall fielding period if that's helpful. As far as the organization of the questions in the survey, we start with sort of a funnel approach. So we want to ask broad questions about quality of life in the city, overall perceptions, and things like that that are pretty general before we get down to specific issue areas or service evaluations. So starting broad, getting more specific as we go, trying to avoid framing or biasing respondents in as many ways as possible.
Thank you.
Okay, so looking at some of those general questions at the top of the survey here. Overall, residents feel that the city is headed in the right direction generally. This has fluctuated a little bit over time. We saw in 2024 the most significant drop, but we are rebounding a little bit here. 68%, so just over 2/3 of residents feel the city is headed in the right direction. And again, our overall quality of life rating has remained largely stable year over year. So you can see the sort of faint dotted lines there right around 75 represent the average score over the past several years. Again, 75 on that 0 to 100 scale is a pretty positive quality of life rating, and you can see the most common responses are actually closer to that 80 or 90 range. So really positive quality of life ratings here. And when we ask residents whether they approve or disapprove of how the elected officials in the city are doing their jobs, 70% say that they approve at least at some level. Again, down slightly over time, but pretty consistent with what we're seeing in most cities up and down the Wasatch Front. And frankly, still a very positive approval rating. 2/3 of residents say that they approve, just 4% strongly approve, but I think the point is well taken that that could be a little bit of confusion following a municipal election year as well. So. The share of residents who say that the city has gotten worse over time has increased over the past several years, and this is one area where we have a little bit of cause for concern. You can see that we have 13% of residents saying that things have gotten much worse. These attitudes are pretty regionally grouped, and we see relatively stable numbers in that about the same category. When we're thinking about the overall quality of life rating that residents are expressing, and we see that average quality of life is quite stable, the interesting dynamic here is that that share of residents who say things are getting worse is just overall getting slightly larger. Where we recruited a new panel this year, we don't feel that this is representative of a specific cohort of residents. We feel that this is pretty representative of the city as a whole, so it's certainly something to keep an eye on. And when we look at the attitudes that are sort of likely to be shaping that, the things that are correlated with that movement, growth is still the #1 pain point that residents are pointing to. Overall, we have 80% of residents this year who say that the city is growing to some degree too quickly. You can see that's bounced up and down a little bit over time, but pretty consistently high share of residents feel things are outpacing the rate of infrastructure improvements and growth in the city.
Really quick,
Yes,
Mr.
sorry.
Mayor, can I ask a question? 2 slides back, you mentioned that and maybe I misunderstood, so that's why I just wanted to ask. You mentioned that maybe some of this is regionally located, but representative of not just one cohort, and I think that's maybe where I'm trying to understand. So if it's not one cohort of people, but you noticed a regional connection,
Yes.
which region was it? And could you provide? And I don't know if it's in further slides.
I was going to say, in the interest of time, have hidden the regional breakouts, so I could pull that up.
No. If you want to keep going,
that'll
that's
be-
fine, but it'll be in the
That'll
presentation.
be in the full presentation that you receive, and again, happy to address any specific follow-up questions after that.
Okay.
I think the point that I was trying to make is not that it's necessarily residential tenure question. So it does seem to be more common among residents who have lived in the city longer, but there are also some regional differences. The residents on sort of the northeast side of the city are most likely to say that things have gotten better. Residents in sort of the older parts of the city are more likely to say things have gotten worse.
Okay, thank you for sharing.
Of course. Again, growth is largely shaping those attitudes. But when we look at residents' positive evaluations, or the things that they say drive them to Lehi, the reasons that they choose to live here, central location is and has been consistently the primary driver for residents. About 45% mention something that has to do with the proximity to I-15, the accessibility of the city, the sort of central positioning between Salt Lake and Utah County or other cities in Utah County. Family-friendly environment is also a large draw for residents, as is general affordability in housing. These are things that came up relative to other places that residents may have considered living along the Wasatch Front. And then work and job opportunities and the small town feel of the city. Again, pretty consistent themes over time, but these are the things that residents are really attached to, the things that characterize Lehi in their minds. And again, coming back to those issues or concerns that residents are expressing, a majority of residents identified something that had to do with traffic or congestion when we asked what they saw as the most important issue facing the city today. Growth in infrastructure was also sort of directly related. Again, a majority of residents citing something about growth in their concerns. And then high-density housing, general affordability, and then water and resources were the other most common themes. But you can see there's quite a gap between the concerns about growth and those other concerns that residents expressed. And looking towards the future, residents identify largely the same issues as things that they would be concerned about over the next several years. So growth, again, mentioned by a majority of residents, traffic by just over a third, infrastructure by about 1 in 4 residents, and then housing and water, again, a little bit of a gap there, but rounding out the top 5 issues. All of that said, residents are still likely to recommend the city as a great place to live. So we have 78% who say that they would recommend the city to friends and family. This number has stayed consistently high despite a little bit of a decline since 2022, which never ceases to surprise me. We see a lot of attitudes in other cities where it is sort of a last in and close the door behind me sentiment when there are particular frustrations about growth or infrastructure limitations. And that doesn't seem to be the case here. We do still have a large share of residents who feel that the city is a great place to live and would recommend it to others. That sort of small town feel or sense of community really shines through in this particular area, I think. Overall, we asked residents to evaluate a few different aspects of life in the city. 91% of residents say that they feel safe living in Lehi, again, consistently high over time there. 79% say that the city is a great place to raise a family. No statistically significant differences in the scores from the last couple years there. 64% say that the city does a good job managing city services. That score has declined slightly over time, something that it's probably worth paying attention to, and we can talk about specific city service ratings there as well. But residents do feel that the city provides all of the services they think it should. 62% say that the city has all the kinds of businesses they would like it to have, and that is a statistically significant increase compared to 2025's data point there. So positive development in terms of economic growth and businesses. And then a dip again in the share of residents who agree that they trust city officials to be open and honest compared to what we saw last year. Again, this could be due to some confusion following the municipal election. It also does just sort of fit the broader narrative that we're seeing around trust in government generally up and down the Wasatch Front. Looking at residents' specific evaluations of city goals, overall residents have positive attitudes and feel that the city is doing a good job focusing on having a family-centered community and providing diverse opportunities and a high quality of life. Residents react really positively to that. 77% total say that that seems like a good direction for the city to head. And that is the largest share of residents that has expressed sort of positive evaluations or agreement with that sentiment over time. So the goal has been shifted slightly year over year. The wording has been tweaked a little bit, but this particular mission statement or direction of having a thriving family-centered community, providing diverse opportunities and a high quality of life is something that resonates with a larger share of residents than we've seen in the past. Looking at the specific points in that overall mission statement or goal, we have a total of 67% of residents who would give the city an excellent or good rating in providing a family-centric community or developing a family-centric community. Similarly, 67% in total would give the city an excellent or good rating for providing a high quality of life in the city. So really high marks there. The area where we see a little bit more division is when it comes to diverse opportunities in Lehi. So we have 47% of residents who would give the city an excellent or good rating there, but a large share of residents who would put things at fair, so maybe a little bit more opportunity for education or additional outreach when we're thinking about the types of opportunities that are available to residents, whether that's different recreation opportunities for different shares of the population, different arts and culture opportunities and events that might reach different audiences. Looking at our specific city service ratings, you can see our fire and emergency medical services stays at the top of the list here with the highest rating overall, 85 on that 0 to 100 scale. Garbage collection comes in second with 82 on that 0 to 100 scale. Again, pretty consistent hierarchy here. Power or electricity services provided by the city coming in fresh and taking our number 3 spot for the highest satisfaction rating. And then police services is right there at 78 out of 100 as well. Rounding out our top 5, we have culinary drinking water in the city at 77 on that 0 to 100 scale. You can see a lot of these ratings really positively clustered. Again, almost all of our city service ratings are above that sort of, if we were to look at it like a letter grade, we have all passing scores, certainly. But when we look at some of the lower ratings, we have development permitting at the bottom of the list here, 42 on that 0 to 100 scale. There's also a large share of residents who are declining to express rating for development permitting, and I conjecture we've sort of changed the framing or the wording for that particular department over time. At one point it was planning and zoning services, development, planning, zoning, anything that has those words in it tends to conjure attitudes about growth, frankly. So in this case, I think we've seen in the past that planning and zoning has been the scapegoat for complaints about growth in the city services section. Development permitting seems to still hold that position here.
But Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question? In the survey, are you offering an opt-out when rating these services if they've never participated in them? So theoretically, these responses should be from people who have participated in the permitting process.
Theoretically, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, there is a not applicable option for all of the services, so residents don't have to express an evaluation if they don't have any experience with that department or service. That said, I think we have seen over time that this tends to be a little bit of an outlet for those attitudes about growth in the city. Looking at residents' attitudes toward traffic conditions, again, this is something that we know is top of mind for residents and is a particular pain point. We have a large share of residents who work outside the city, 46% this year. That's a pretty consistent split between those who work inside Lehi and those who commute out of the city. But that is certainly a factor when we're looking at those traffic concerns. And the things that are most likely to be considerable concerns or pain points for residents are evening and morning traffic on those major thoroughfares. So 45% of residents say that it is a major or significant concern to them, or it affects them personally. When we're looking at evening traffic, morning traffic on those major thoroughfares, slightly less of a major impact on residents, but still we're looking at more than a third who say that that is a pain point for them. It directly impacts them. And then about 1 in 4 residents who say that evening traffic on freeway exits and on-ramps or morning traffic on freeway exits and on-ramps are particular pain points for them. When we're looking at daytime traffic, we see significantly fewer concerns or direct impacts to residents, and traffic in residential areas is slightly less of a concern than, again, those sort of major commuting pain points. We also asked residents whether the conditions on these different roads and access points are having a direct impact on them, and we see a pretty substantial share, about 1 in 5 residents say that the road conditions on major thoroughfares directly affect them, but significantly fewer residents say that the road conditions in residential areas or on freeway exits or on-ramps have affected them directly in the past year. And you can see those ratings have fluctuated a little bit. So last year we had a consistent 16% of residents who said that residential area road conditions were affecting them directly, but that's down pretty substantially from 2023 when that was a larger pain point. Major thoroughfares are a larger pain point now than they have been in the past, and those freeway exits and on-ramps have sort of bounced around a little bit, but 14% of residents say that that has a direct impact on them this year. And then a few other potential traffic impacts or transportation considerations. 27% of residents this year say that the accessibility of mass transit has an extreme or major impact on them directly. So it's something that a larger share of residents than ever before say is affecting them. We also have about 1 in 4 residents who say that the accessibility of safe walking routes is something that affects them personally. Bike lanes are the least common concern for residents overall. And the last section that we'll delve into here is just looking at residents' preferences for information and communication from the city. Overall, we have the largest share of residents sort of coalescing on one channel, saying that they currently get most of their information from the city through social media. The city newsletter and word of mouth are the next most common information sources, followed by emails from the city. When we look at the channels that residents would prefer to use, we do have a larger share of residents, again, who participated in an online survey, saying that an email from the city would be their preferred mode of contact. But we find that the city newsletter is sort of meeting the needs of those who would prefer to use it. We have a good amount of parity there. A smaller share of residents would prefer to rely on word of mouth than currently do. So again, some opportunity to redirect attention to some of the more city official channels. And then social media as well. Still a large cohort of residents who would prefer to stay on that channel and continue to receive communication or information from the city that way. Some of the topics that residents find particularly valuable. Majority of residents say that updates about road construction, traffic, and infrastructure projects are useful to them. Utility and service interruptions, parks, recreation, library services, arts and culture opportunities in the city, and emergency alerts and public safety notices, sort of rounding out that top tier of notifications or types of communication that residents find especially valuable. City events and community programs, land use development and planning zoning notices are the next most common. After that, we do sort of dip into a smaller share of residents with a longer tail of issues here. But budget, taxes, fees, and capital projects, neighborhood-specific updates, elections and voter information, and city council meeting agendas, decisions, and public hearing notifications are important to about 1 in 4 residents, respectively. And when we look at the channels of communication that might best serve each of these needs, again, email sort of topping the list across the board here, whether it's traffic and construction or political updates or development projects, residents find email to be a particularly useful channel for these updates. Text alerts for infrastructure and road project notices would be especially welcome. while the city newsletter seems to be a better channel for political updates, whether that's council decisions or hearings, development projects going forward, and some of those community events. Overall, we have a pretty consistent share of residents who would like to receive some degree more communication from the city. So just shy of 2/3 of residents would like to see a lot or a little bit more information through the city, again, through some of those channels specifically. And when we look at the ways that residents say the city could improve communication, looking at multi-platform options, so seeing reach to different demographics and parts of the city by utilizing those text alerts and emails and social media. I think this is something that, again, represents more of an opportunity for education and outreach to residents than a particular need that the city isn't addressing. The level of awareness there is obviously going to be pretty important when we're looking at how effectively we're reaching residents through those various channels. We do have a large share of residents, just over 1 in 4, who say that email communication could be better utilized, more social media engagement, timely information, and then detailed and transparent communication were the other common themes that we saw in those responses about how communication might be improved. We also asked a series of questions about the Everbridge alert system. We have about 49% of residents who say that that's their preferred avenue for receiving emergency alerts. Just over 1/3 of residents say that they have signed up. And when we ask residents who haven't signed up for those alerts why not, what we see is that there's a large lack of awareness there. 8 out of 10 residents say that they had never heard of this system. So definitely an opportunity to increase awareness and engagement there. And then about 1 in 4 residents say that they're not sure how to sign up. So again, certainly an education opportunity. And that concludes our brief review. Again, there's more detail in the slides that we can send around after this meeting, but based on what we've covered here, any additional questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So I think it is good to do it in January, especially as it kind of maybe helps us make some decisions budget-wise and what's priority. I'm kind of wondering again, along Councilmember Harrison's question, is when was this scheduled to be? Like, when did the previous council make a decision to send this out? Is it just like standard? It's just that time?
The staff would make the decision when to send it out, the council.
Okay.
Yeah, we just try and get it ahead of the budget retreat.
Okay. Just with 3 new council members and 4 really, with 4 new council members. And I think all of us who were in the election last year, this really just validates what we were all hearing from residents. So anyways, and I don't know, probably not going to say what the cost of this is, but to me it is kind of unfortunate that it was, and it's not you, but just overall statement that this was done with all these new council members here, and it's confusing whether it was reflecting the previous council, the current council, and with all that, and especially, I mean, most of us talk with thousands of residents, so this is confirming what we were told.
And if I may, I don't want to downplay your concern, but really that's 1 or 2 questions out of many, right? We're trying to get a rating on how the city services at large are doing, not necessarily how the elected officials are performing. So I validate your concern, certainly, but I think we still get a lot of value out of doing the survey when we did out ahead of the budget retreat. So that's really the long and short of it. It's not your report card. I hope you don't take it that way. It's more our report card, if you will.
Yeah, no, I don't take it personally. I'm just considering cost and the residents, you know.
Yeah, and I guess help me understand that concern. I don't understand the cost being a concern.
Well,
doing
if
it in
it's
January.
not completely accurate because we have this transition period,
Sure.
you know, I would like to get the best bang for our buck if we're spending the money on it. Just like how the ratings went down after the election 2 years ago, probably reflective of that election. You know, that's just something to think about when we have a municipal election, when there's especially a large overturn.
Sure. I just don't want the perception to be that we wasted money on the survey, because certainly we got a lot of valuable information out of it, but certainly to the point of the elected officials, perhaps another timing in the year would be better.
I think part of it to look at too, that so little of it is about who's in office right now. You're seeing consistency of no matter who's in office, it's the same kind of concerns that are consistent over time. We're seeing those things. Maybe there's a lack of being able to address the amount that the city can actually influence and impact those areas. So maybe those kind of things are handled. But I think for the most part, some of these things like public safety, those are things that we need to know. What is the residents? How do they feel towards public safety? That really has little to do with, who just was elected. I think those things are really key when we go into budget. And some of these other things probably can't really be impacted because, the officials are the officials. That's who's been elected. But these other parts with what departments are doing well, where can we improve communication, that's a lot to do with kind of how this council now is going to drive decisions that if we didn't have this data, we may not be making it. We'll just, kind of shoot from the hip. So I would agree with Jason on that. Like, take anything when it comes to that might be a reflection of council with a grain of salt and focus on the other parts of it.
Any other comments or questions? Thank you. I'll throw one comment there. I know I got mine on the 6th right after I was sworn in, so I spoke very highly of this city. So we can throw one of the however many there was out. Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your time.
I think data is good. Any data in versus data out helps us. I think we can be aware of those things, though, in the next coming couple years as they come up. Maybe to offset that a week or two, but it's good information. Item number 3.1, Police Department staffing discussion. Chief Paul, turn some time over to you.
Thank you. I want to thank the mayor and council for taking the time to let us come and have a short discussion on police staffing in preparation of going into the budget season. And I will say the surveys are valuable for us because it looks like what's on everybody's mind is kind of what's on our mind, and that's growth and traffic, which are really the two biggest drivers for us and the needs that we have right now. Many of you got the growth analysis, the staffing study that we used last year. I know all of you did. I sent it out recently. And I know there were some questions about that. We are using the same study this year to reevaluate where we're at now. And the advantage is it'll give us last year's data plus this year's data. Unfortunately, I can't give you any hard results right now because we're still vetting the information and we're going through and finding that. We did get your email that outlined some of your concerns and the questions that you wanted to address, and those are the things that we're also trying to address right now. But just out of wanting to be as completely accurate as we can be, we don't really have any hard data right now to report, but we're happy to answer any questions relative to the study and maybe talk that way. And I also want to thank Mariah while I'm up here because Mariah has spent a lot of time going through our data and sifting through a lot of stuff to get the most accurate information. And she may be in a better position to explain the methodology, but I'm happy to address any questions you have right now or talk about that.
Yeah, Mayor, if I may. Yeah. Well, thank you, Chief. I had a really good experience during the ride-along a couple weeks ago from about 7 p.m. until midnight. Just thoroughly impressed with your officers, and so thank you for that opportunity. I know Councilmember Stallings had a very similar experience. So the one thing that sticks out to me, and I appreciate the studies that you sent, especially the one specific to Lehi around the peak workload analysis. And it talks a lot about the saturation index, which for those who haven't seen this study, it's basically wanting 60% of the time that an officer's on duty to respond to calls and so forth, with the other 40% being discretionary, so they can proactively patrol and be available. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. This study says that 60% of the officer's time should be committed and 40% should be discretionary, or It could be that they're in court or they're in training or they're on vacation and they're simply not available for calls. So that, yeah, the study says that, and moreover, it says 60% of your total sworn officers should be dedicated to the patrol division, where that's your most calls for emergency response and, those immediate calls for service. And I can report that 60% of our workforce is in the patrol division, 62% right now. So we're very good there. The other side of it, the discretionary time and the saturation stuff that you're talking about are the things that we're still trying to analyze based on new data from, even changes from last budget to this budget. So.
Okay, and the one, I really like the study because it goes through the 24 hours in a day, starting at midnight. And out of those 24 hours of needed staffing versus current staffing, there are 2 hours, so at 12 a.m. and 4 a.m. we're right on par, right? I think there's 1 hour at 6 a.m. where we have an extra officer. But every other hour, so the remaining 21 hours, we have anywhere from needing an additional 1 officer to meet that good point of staffing to, I think the most was at 8 p.m., 22 officers understaffed. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's what the study shows, and that's quite concerning, and that's the stuff we're trying to address. And I guess our hope, and my hope specifically, is that through this analysis, it's very likely a bigger number than we can make up in one budget cycle. And so to develop a 5-year strategy, 4 or 5-year strategy, and I noticed that was a concern that the council expressed too. So our hope is that through this in-depth study, we can develop a plan to build it out, 4 or 5 years, and hopefully close that gap. The advantage, you make a good point, the advantage on this study versus a simple ratio, population ratio study, is not only does it tell you what you need, but it also tells you where your deficiencies are in the time of day, and so you can allocate resources that way. And that's something that we started doing a couple of years ago. Before we looked at it this way, we had teams of 6 officers that just rotated through the schedule, and then we realized that it would be more effective to put more officers on at high volume times. And so that's when we adjusted that. So we have more officers out at peak times. Yeah. And then I know another question that came up was the shift differential. And that's what spurred that, was because everybody didn't rotate equally. We started to consider maybe a shift differential to offset those that are stuck on a less desirable shift, simply because of seniority and stuff like that. So we're looking at staffing needs, time of day, and then also fair compensation for those that work those off hours.
Mr. Mayor, may I? I'm just curious to know, when we raised taxes several years ago to, my understanding, I wasn't on the council at that time, but that was to help with hiring more officers. How many more officers were we able to hire based off of that tax increase? And that might be a question for Dean.
Yeah, it might be. I know that last year, which this last year we hired 3 that the city funded, and then we were also given 2 by a grant. Now that grant was delayed a little bit because of the government shutdown, you'll remember, and we weren't actually able to hire them until January of this year. But they're now on the staff, and we added them. I'm trying to recall the year before. Honestly, I don't remember if it was 3 officers or 2 officers or.
Yeah.
I know.
Wages.
Okay, go ahead. Take it away.
One, I can look it up, but I don't. I think in 2022, I think the tax increase ended up being about $350,000. I think it was 2 officers and maybe a parks person. In 24, I don't know that it was new officers. It was really, we had some salary studies come back where we were deficient in wages in both police and fire. And that's really what that went for. I don't think
Okay.
it was for officers. I think it was for pay.
Okay, that's a great clarification. Thank you. And then those 2 officers from the grant program, that's not my understanding, and I would love to understand it better from you. The grant program essentially helps us onboard an officer over a series of years, but eventually the city assumes the full cost once the grant runs out.
Yes,
Right.
yes, and it's a 3-year onboarding, and I believe the city has the option to pay it all. You know, you have up to 3 years to pay that off,
Okay.
and it also doesn't cover the complete cost of an officer. It only covers. It either covers the equipment or the wages. I can't remember which. I think it's the wages. And actually, Matt here? Matt wrote the grant, and he could
Okay.
probably answer better.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have 2 officers over the next 3 years. We pay a decreasing amount each year. So I think we've got $250,000 over 3 years to help onboard these officers. So maybe the first year we get $100,000, and it drops down each year until it's depleted.
Okay, and I think the point I'm making, or the point I hope to understand, would be that grant funding is not a sustainable model for growing a police department, because eventually the city will assume the full cost. And I just want to draw that as we head into budget season, making that very clear that while it's a help to us, it's not a sustainable. We can't rely on it fully for the growth of the department. Is that correct?
Correct, and it's expected as part of the grant that you do keep them on board after the 3 years has expired to fully fund them. So.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate the clarity.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, so I appreciate the study, and it's great to, make sure our decisions are data-driven. So,
Yeah.
And one thing I noticed that really alarmed me, I mean, I know we're understaffed, but looking at that threshold and how far beyond that threshold we are in just throughout the day, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And it's like 80% and above, up to over 100%. I'm guessing because the time to respond to the call exceeds that hour. But that worried me too, is that, and then going on the drive along, I know how busy they are. One call to another car, and they were such different. It was an incredible experience.
Yeah.
We did everything to help somebody unlock a car door, to respond to a potential domestic violence situation. So that was very helpful, and I recommend all the council to do that when they can. But so it's not just, I'm just amazed at how incredibly busy you are in Lehi, you know, and you keep us safe, and I just don't want to fall behind.
I appreciate that, and the numbers can be alarming, but again, this is one theory or one method of staffing, and there are others. Now, with that said, this is one of the most thorough and well thought out methods that I've ever come across, and I'm glad we're using it, but it still kind of talks in general terms that may or may not be straight applicable to Lehi. But no, I do appreciate, you talk about all the things you did, from unlocking cars. It's not strictly crime rate. A lot of calls for service are not really criminal in nature. They don't result in an arrest, but it's just a service that we offer to the public. And so sometimes people will look at crime rates and say, we have a low crime rate, we must not be very busy, but crime rate is one small part of what we do too. So I guess my point is there's so many factors to consider. This study is really thorough at trying to capture everything and be data driven. But with that said too, there's not flaws, but there are things that don't necessarily translate to Lehi. So it really comes down to, once we do the analysis, what we're comfortable with, which again, if you go back to the citizen study or survey, you could say, we're at 78% favorable. Would we'd like to be up around 90 or 95, but you know, it kind of helps us gauge too how the citizens feel about the services they're getting, and I'll just put a plug in for the officers. They do incredible work. They're very professional. We're very picky about how we vet our officers and who we bring in here, and we've had great success bringing people in, and they love working here. They love working for the city. They love the community support. And I do feel that it's important that we get them enough help that they can do it safely and go home to their families. And that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, and that's one thing I noticed. At one call we had to wait a while for backup, so that is a concern. But can I get your opinion? So I agree. There's a lot of different models, and I looked at them all, and all the studies kind of point to this one as like the gold standard kind of thing. But so the 60% threshold, and it's not a hard and fast number, it's kind of generally should be in close to that range. How comfortable are you looking to do a 60% and then a 40% more proactive policing? Or, I mean, obviously we got a 5-year plan, so we got to be a little flexible there.
Yeah.
But what is your comfort level? And then also, again, talking to the officers, we want to stay ahead of things. We're going to experience a lot more growth, right? And so to me personally, that proactive policing is very essential, right? The officer initiated, activity, that kind of thing. So what is your comfort level? What do you see as a good proactive policing? And then another thing I wanted to talk to you about really quick is just what can we do in that interim till we can get up to where we need to be? Are there things, I've talked to some residents who volunteer with VIBS,
VIBS. Yeah.
Would that be helpful? Are there other things we can do in the meantime to help officers out?
There are some things we can do. There are things that we are doing that kind of help that. I'll first answer your first question about 60%. I mean, I would love to be at 60. If we were at 70 or so, I don't know. I'm concerned about how fast we're growing and how fast our call load is increasing, but I don't see it as critical, maybe as much as somebody else right now, as long as we're closing that gap. And there are things, like I said, we've reallocated and put our officers out at our high crime or our high activity times. We've also recently gone to an online reporting system, which there are a lot of calls for service that people don't necessarily need to see an officer face to face. They can access it through our website. They can get all the information they need. It'll generate a case number for them. And then we have an officer that's assigned to direct those where they need to go. And so that saves response time and sending an officer out for every call that might come through. So we're doing that. Some of the other things, we have hired a part-time officer right now that we don't incur the same cost of all the benefits and all that stuff. And we plug him in when we have guys in training and stuff like that. So there are little things we can do. But, yeah, we just need to be aware of the growth. So we also, one more thing that just came to mind, and this is exciting for me. So the Utah Department of Public Safety has a SIAC center. It's a data analysis center and they operate for the whole state. And this helps primarily with investigations, not so much with our calls for service immediately, but it'll make our investigation time more efficient. Anyway, they do it for the state, and they're housed up in Salt Lake, and they service all of law enforcement in the state. But we reached out to them after going to some training about the possibility of opening up a Utah County substation. And we happen to have space in our building, and the only thing that we have to do is provide them workspace. And so we have analysts that are coming in, and they'll be able to sift through data and information that our investigators are researching and looking into. They'll be able to do that much quicker, and we've already seen some benefit. They haven't officially come into the building, but they came and toured it, and we happened to be working on a case that was tying up a lot of resources on our property crimes team, and they took that information and identified the suspect real quickly, and we were able to go pick them up. So I think even as simple as bringing in data analysts and crime analysts in the building and helping us sift through information quicker will also help.
Mayor, if I may, just one more question. Yeah. Chief, can you talk a minute about call volume, or what counts as a call, I guess? I know different cities may qualify a call as every single thing, right? Like if there's a suspicious person walking down the street and then it's, the cop drives by, there's nothing there, they move on. That may not count as a call in one city, but it may count as a call in another city.
Yeah, it's not completely standardized. What you might be thinking of is what generates a case number versus what's a call for service.
Okay.
I mean, any time somebody calls dispatch for an officer and the officer responds, that's a call for service, but it may not trigger a case number. You know what I mean? If no one's being arrested, if no crime's being committed, if it's a something suspicious in a neighborhood and it's delayed, somebody calls it in, the officer drives through the neighborhood, doesn't really observe anything suspicious. There's really nothing to report and generate a case number, but there is a CAD number that's captured that accounts for the time responding to that. So that may be what you're thinking of, and each agency has their own triggers, what generates a case number versus what's just a CAD call.
Okay. Thanks.
So to follow up on that, when you say Lehi has 45,000 responded to calls, is that case numbers or is that an officer's responding?
That's calls for service.
Okay.
Yeah. Actually, our case numbers are around 26,000.
Okay.
So
yeah,
you can see there's a lot of work they do that doesn't necessarily generate a case number, like unlocking a car door. That will generate a CAD call, but it may not generate a case number.
I think this is super helpful, and just speaking with you and kind of how we ended up in the pattern of 3 a year, and also I can just see the growth in Lehi in all areas has just exceeded what we thought it would be. Like you look at where our projections are when it comes to MAG, and they're way beyond where they should be. So it makes sense that we can no longer follow that same pattern that we've had in 2015, and we should have adjusted this earlier. Something that would be helpful for me, because I know you're talking about that this is one data point, but also so many other data points out there. Orem did a study in 2022. It wasn't with ICMA, but it was with another one. And I haven't seen that study, but it might be good to kind of look where were the comparable population sizes to be able to gather some data points from them too, and kind of, because I think that might help us make sure we nail down what that increase of officer per year is, kind of based on surrounding area. I know we're different demographics, different call volumes and stuff, but at least that might be one comparison point. And they've been super helpful with me trying to understand this better too. And then it would be helpful to have just like even more of a breakdown when it comes to like on the report where it has like your needed staffing, your current staffing, but also have that breakdown of what the shifts are like, where we have 72 officers, but how does that actually break down during the 7-week period?
Yeah.
And just be able to really narrow that down. I'm passionate about how incredible our experienced force is and wanting to make sure that we take care of them, making sure that we have really great experienced officers having their back. So it's like, I know that's just so much to balance to make sure we don't lose officers. At the same time, we're increasing and making sure that we're getting to that number that you need. So,
yeah, thank you. I can definitely reach out to Orem and see kind of what they use as well as a comparison.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think will be helpful, and this is some of the questions that the council asked, is I can give you a kind of a breakdown on the high priority calls or the dangerous calls that require multiple officers or more backup and stuff like that. I can kind of give you a breakdown of an increase that we're seeing in those type of calls as well. So I should be able, I'm hopeful to provide you some very good information as you make
I would
decisions
love that
going
because
forward.
last budget season, that was my concern, is when it was a 3+2, so 5 versus, but you were asking for 9, and that was my question. Or do we ever have officers alone on these dangerous calls? And something else that's, been brought up too is like, if we have so many officers that are on these dangerous calls, are other calls being like delayed? They're also dangerous because they're not being able to get to. So I think those are really important data points that we can make a really good case for. Like the Y2K analytics, it said like 78% citywide, but police was 91% is like favorable. So that's what but that we want to keep it.
I thought that
there.
was fire.
I think it was police. It was public safety. Yeah. So I know.
They'll take it.
Yeah. I think they were.
Look, if
They're like
all we
102,
had to do was put out fires.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the robust approach to it, and also just having that, what's it really like? We're officers that are having to go into these dangerous situations that we never want to have an officer alone on. So.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, for the extremely dangerous calls, we have a real good working relationship with our neighboring agencies, and it's not uncommon to send more backup from neighboring agencies. We don't want to have to rely on that, but we commonly go and assist on high priority calls, and they help us, back as well. So we have a pretty good working relationship with all the departments in the county.
And I guess I am so grateful for the information and the data. I think this is going to really help us move forward and help us support you. I'm also concerned, though, that as we dig into the details, we're essentially broadcasting to anyone who wants to do something not so great in our town, like when our officers are there and when they're not and things like that. So I want to be really cautious, and I appreciate the transparency you're bringing, but I also want to make sure that we're not, by doing this, we're not doing anything that would compromise the safety of you and your team. So I appreciate it, and I just want you to know that I'm aware of that, and I'm trying to do everything we can for you without compromising what makes you guys great and safe.
Awesome. Thank you.
Chief, we appreciate you. You know that. Thank you for the information as we move forward. We'll work together and making sure we can continue to build your department. So thank you. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Also, thank you, Chief Kraft. 91's pretty good. Okay. 3.2, Mayor and City Council Committee Assignments. Mayor Pro Tem Stallings, welcome aboard.
Hello. Okay, Tisha's going to help me with this. I got a call even today that there's some concern about understanding what the different assignments are, what they entail, and did the rest of you get, Tisha sent out an email, that was kind of late in the day, but.
You should be able to pull it up now, and we're going to pull it up on this screen as well.
Okay.
And we can kind of walk through the different committees and explain those in more detail.
Okay, let's do that and have Tisha talk about the committees and ask her any questions. Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, can I just ask? There's one more item after this, right, Mayor? Just wondering how much time we would have about approximately, so we can stay on task. Just wondering.
We should be fine. We have some closed stuff that has to be done today too, so we're all right.
We'll go quickly. I'll go quickly through this. So Mariah's helped me put together this spreadsheet in a way that's more organized, hopefully for you to see and understand what cities we have, or what committees we have in the city, and also just the committees that are in our community that we're also involved in. So we have different tabs down at the bottom, if you have that in front of you. We have organized these in a couple different ways. We have committees that are sorted by municipal code. So these are all the committees that are established in our code, and therefore they have to be subject to the Open Public Meetings Act. So that's why those are kind of pulled out and separate, but you can see kind of all the committee members that are on that board. These are mostly residents, with a little exception to the Land Use Hearing Authority. The other tabs, let's see, the liaison info, if we want to jump over to that one. These are ones that are traditionally reserved for council assignments. So we have the Alpine Aspen Peak School District one. Heather's been serving on that. Is there, I guess maybe for the sake of time, are there any on this list that you have questions about that I can address? Or I can go committee by committee and explain what they do.
I mean, I guess I would have a question of what is the, I don't know, not the requirement, but kind of the, like maybe when they meet, like what is the commitment there for some of these, right?
Yeah, sure. We can go through some of that. And we do have a couple council members that are serving on some of those boards, and so I may defer to them. We also have staff that are involved in these boards, so I may defer to them as well. But the Archives Committee is closely associated with the Historic Preservation Commission. That should probably be the same person. Michelle, do you want to explain how often those two committees meet?
Good question. So the Historic Preservation Committee is once a month. Trying to think if it's 4 or 5. Matt, do you remember? First Thursday. Is it at 4 or 5? I don't. At 4 o'clock. Okay, I just go by what my calendar says for the day. Yeah, so we usually do that. But the archives, historical archives, is also once a month. Usually the third Wednesday at 6. But that one is, especially now, we do a lot with historical markers, so that's once or twice a month, and helping prepare for those things, and then Heritage Days and preparing for that. Those meetings are typically once a month, but there's always other things to help with and as part of that. So.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may, I agree with Rachel. It'd be great if there was a column that said like how often they meet and the days and times, and that way as we all kind of process through things. Not sure if that's easily accessible for you guys to add, or if every staff member could add it in for what's relevant to them.
So we are working on that. In fact, if you want to hop over to the other committees tab, that's probably where the information is. We're still gathering some information, but I think, is that up to date with what the answers that we received today from staff? At 2 o'clock. As of 2 o'clock. Okay, I think that's most of them. So you'll see that some of those boards, maybe I'll just go through that list first. Maybe that will be the most helpful way to do this. Budget Audit Committee. Dean kind of coordinates that. It's just a semi-annual meeting, possibly could be a quarterly meeting, and they work closely with the audit report. So they would be in communication with like the auditor that was just here today. Chamber of Commerce Board, Marlon serves on that. I don't know if Marlon's here, but I think that I think they said that we would prefer that staff stay on that board. So Civic Improvement Association, this is the rodeo committee. They're a 501c3 committee, so they are separate from the city. They do not have they do not have a liaison from the city. They are their own board, and they are just, their purpose is only to put on the rodeo. So they are the rodeo production. You might have heard them referred to as the CIA. They actually just changed their name to the Lehi Roundup Rodeo Committee. That was kind of the Civic Improvement Association, or CIA, was creating some confusion. So that's, so it's now just the Lehi Roundup Rodeo Committee. And as far as the rodeo goes, they are always looking for community volunteers to help put on the rodeo. In fact, all of their members are volunteer. No one's paid on that committee. Council of Governments, that's a mayor assignment. Some of these committees that are assigned to the mayor is because the committee requires that it be the mayor that serve on that board. That's the case with the Council of Governments. Arts Council. Heather, do you want to mention that one?
Arts Council meets, it's now the first Tuesday at 8 o'clock. And it's Kurt Ellison who's the director instead of Jean.
Oh, yeah.
But
that's really old.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of this is really old that we're still working to update. This is definitely a work in progress still. Curtis Center, that one we no longer need, so we can actually delete that one. Environmental Sustainability Committee, that one is monthly. We have staff that organizes that committee. They primarily do education and outreach for things like recycling and water and energy efficiency. Envision Utah Board, that's the mayor's committee. However, we can have an alternate on that committee, and so that is important, and we've noted that back on the liaison info sheet. Envision Utah Board, I am trying to recall, I think that's maybe a monthly meeting. We can, yeah, it's not very frequent.
Yeah.
It's not a frequent.
Yeah, it
Quarterly.
used to
Okay,
be
so even
monthly,
longer.
but
Yeah, so that's just a quarterly one. Okay, Fox Hollow Golf Course Board. This one is really unique. It's an interlocal between the cities of Lehi, Pleasant Grove, and American Fork. All three cities own the golf course. So each city has 3 representatives that can serve on the board, and that can be anybody. So currently, right now, we have Ryan, he's staff, and then we also have Johnny Revel and Max Powell, and those 2 serve as residents. So the other cities, you'll see a mix. Sometimes it'll be a council member, sometimes staff, sometimes residents. And all 3 of those positions we do need to appoint, need to be appointed. So yeah, when we decide what to do with those, we'll have to put those on the council agenda for a resolution. And that meeting is once a month. I think it's the third Thursday. Yep, third Thursday of the month, thanks. And usually it's very helpful to be a golfer. It's not required, but it is helpful if you know about golf. Let's see, the IHC Community Outreach, that one's a mayor board. Interfaith, that one's also the mayor board. IPA, that one is Joel. Iron Horse District, this is the Boy Scouts of America Committee. This is, I believe, a quarterly meeting. The time commitment I know for that is minimal. Irrigation Company Board, Dave serves on this, and we do need to have a council member on this board. And they meet once a month. Let me see, I might actually have the days. Typically the first Monday of the month, it looks like. Okay, John Hutchings Museum Committee, they are currently redoing their bylaws right now, but I think for the most part this will stay the same. But this committee is a little bit different in that when their bylaws were originally created, the Hutchings Museum was just another city department. And so it functions differently than some of these other boards. They've since become a completely separate 501c3, but their bylaws still require that a council member serve on that board as a voting member. We also have staff on that board, Steve Marchbanks, and there's also some requirements for the Hutchings family heirs to serve on that board as well. However, all appointments are made by the mayor and confirmed by the council. Jordan River Commission, this one is monthly, and it's kind of a regional commission just formed with cities that have the Jordan River located within their boundaries. They focus on just improving Jordan River conditions and river sustainability. MAG, all of these MAG committees, those are all requirements that the mayor serve on that. Metropolitan Water District. I don't know anything about this board, Lauren. That's your board. But that's mostly staff, and then we have 2 residents on the board. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it's just an independent, and then it's appointed by the mayor.
That's right.
And then they have their own function.
Yes, in fact, I think they are also subject to the Open Public Meetings Act, but not under the city's umbrella because they are separate.
Did you say the irrigation company? That's an independent one too, Lehi Irrigation?
Oh, yes, yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't require a council member. We have put one on in the past.
Oh, or is that the one that Paul Hancock was on?
Paul's on that currently.
Oh, okay.
Now, his term will be up next, this year, so that might be something to consider.
Okay, we might need to look at the bylaws and see.
It's an independent.
Okay. Ms. Lehi,
Do they show me on that board?
oh, yes, that's right. Thank you.
Read that? I need new glasses.
Ms. Lehi, we just have, they're also an independent 501c3. Melanie serves with that board or works with that board. The North Point Solid Waste Special Service District. This board meets monthly, and yeah, it's just a special service district. Let's see, I might have the actual dates on that one. I think just monthly.
It's during the day, though.
Do you know? Oh, are they? Yeah, Bo, do you know when they meet?
Yeah, it's typically the last Monday of the month at 9 a.m.
That's probably why we have staff. That's why we probably have staff on that board right now.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I just as a disclaimer for what I'm about to say, this is not a reflection of any member of staff. I'm not calling anybody out, not tonight, but out of principle, I believe that if any of these committees have taxing authority, that we should have an elected official on them. And I know that right now that's not fully, I think that's maybe not how we do it now, but something to chew on that the council might want to consider is if these entities that have taxing authority, we should have an elected official present.
Yeah, I actually highly support that. I think we could have both staff and an elected official if possible. Is that something that would be able to be done if the council feels strongly about that?
I guess it would just depend on the board, and you may not be able to have more than one official person, but certainly we could have a staff assigned to help with the technical stuff. Yeah.
Or what if, there was a council member who was like CC'd on items or something like that?
Do it that way too. Yeah. But typically they'll have one person who votes our interest on the board. So.
Yeah, and I think the point I'm making is just as elected officials, it's our duty, to oversee like the taxing, and ultimately we would be the ones being held accountable for some of those taxes that if they get changed or anything like that. And so it's just something to think about. You can agree or disagree, but it's just kind of a principle that if an entity is taxing you, you should have accountability there. Not a reflection of staff and the efforts made. I'm sure you guys are awesome and great. It's just more sort of a thing of principle.
Mr. Mayor, can I add something too? I think it might help to differentiate between liaison and board on some of these too. Some of them you're talking about they're on the board. A lot of these that we do, we're liaisons. We're not on the board. We don't vote. We don't make motions. We're just there to support. So that might help to differentiate on those as well.
That's a great point.
Yes. And we are actually working on that. We have a box there for voting members.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
That's a really good point. I think that is really important to have. North Utah Valley Animal Shelter Board. Right now we just have Chad Ray. He's a police officer. Roundup Committee, that is more of an internal, that functions as more of an internal committee. So Melanie is obviously, she's in charge of the special events. And then she has residents that volunteer for that, and that makes up that committee.
So question, that's separate from the Lehi Roundup Rodeo Committee.
Yes,
that was
okay.
just
Yes.
renamed from the CIA.
Yes, correct. So this Roundup Committee, so the Roundup Rodeo Committee is completely separate. This Roundup Committee is just the celebration. So everything that happens during that week except the rodeo. Thanksgiving Point Advisory Board. Jason is serving on that one right now. TSSD, oh yeah. TSSD, that's our sewer district that involves several cities in North Utah County. Dave Norman currently serves on that.
Tisha, can I break in for a
Yeah,
sec?
sure.
So with TSSD, kind of with Emily's point, they don't charge taxes, but it is a special, they charge fees, I guess. We used to have a council member liaison. The past council thought staff would be better, so if you want to go back, that's something you can consider too. Talk,
That's one board. I respect what you guys are saying and where you're going. That's one board, though, that's so technical. I would strongly recommend that we leave Dave there.
And yeah, from what I understand, most cities have staff members. I think Alpine still has a council member there, but yeah, just throwing it out
Your
there.
call.
UAMP's board, that's a similar situation.
And you don't want to go to those meetings.
And yeah, Utah League of Cities and Towns, yay, that one is done. We have that one actually done and assigned out.
No take-backs on that one?
Yeah. UTA Advisory Board, that's the mayor. UTA Station Area Plan. Did we say this one had been completed, or is this still ongoing?
I think this is still ongoing because we'll have we'll have future ones coming forward, so.
Okay. Utah County Winter Task Force Committee. This is also the mayor. Utah Lake Authority Commission, that one is actually established by state code, and that is the mayor. Utah Valley Clean Air Task Force, looks like they meet monthly, and this is more regional, and it's focused on improving the air quality in Utah County. Utah Valley Dispatch Special Service District, so this is Lehi City combined with some other cities that make up our dispatch. Bo, when are those meetings?
That's a great question. Scott serves on that board now. I'm just an alternate, so I don't have those dates.
Scott Sampson?
Scott DeBell.
Scott DeBell.
Okay, thank you. UVU, that one is also the mayor's Wasatch Front Regional Committee. That one is also required to have the mayor on that. Fresh Look Transit Study, that one's actually done, so we can remove that committee. And then we have the Youth Council, and that functions as an internal committee as well. So we have staff that manages that with Heather, you're the liaison right now.
Who's the alternate? Yeah.
The alternate, okay. And they, usually meet.
It was Chris. Yeah.
Yes, that's
Yep.
right. They usually meet like a couple times a month.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, okay, so that's it. If we want to go back over to the liaison info tab. So these are just kind of the traditional ones that have been assigned to the council. And actually most of them, even the staff ones, we included a lot of the staff ones on there too. Michelle, how do you want to kind of lead the discussion on how to assign some of those?
Do you, I want to hear from the council if you feel comfortable talking about deciding tonight on the assignments, or do you want more information, or how do you feel? And then the other question is, I know some of you brought up maybe adding some new liaison assignments. I know, I think Rachel visited the senior center and they were interested in having a council member kind of.
Yeah, I think they used to have a liaison, and then when they were put under with the recreation, or with the legacy center, they don't have a liaison anymore, and they would appreciate more attention from the council.
And James, I think you mentioned the small business commission. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, that's still in the works with staff to kind of develop the outline of that, but I think that would be a good idea for sure. And I had the same input from the senior center, so I'd support that.
Were there any others, new creations that anybody was interested in, or
did you have any, Mayor? I thought I remember you having a No.
No, I just keep
Okay.
looking at all of mine.
You're like, well, what I get into.
Okay.
Okay.
I do like Rachel's idea of like getting all the times and stuff. I think I'd be more comfortable making a decision on our assignments once we have all of the times and everything, if that's something you're comfortable with.
I'm fine. I want you guys to have good information.
I also have seen some cities have a liaison to planning commission. I don't know if that's, I don't know how people feel about that, but I have seen some cities do that.
I'll just say,
I know that
Yeah,
Kim
you
is
can
the
offer
planning
my 2
director.
cents too.
being on planning commission, I think because planning commission is a recommending body, when council members are there seems to be like a appearance of influence that, we're here to then give that council member what recommendation we think that council member wants. So I don't know if we're trying to try and be unbiased and give them just the ability to give us what they, the planning commission is really going through, does this meet the code? And we have a much more wider discretion on what we do with that. So that would be my only concern is I would expect all of us are essentially liaisons in that we're watching planning commission. That's really important, valuable information to us. I don't know that I would have another council member report to me on the planning commission. And that's what I would think a liaison position would do.
Yeah, and if I can chime in, Mr. Mayor, I think of it from the applicant's perspective. So if an applicant is coming in with a legislative item and they are presenting to the Planning Commission while knowing that the final stop is sitting right behind them, potentially having influence on those recommending to that final stop, which is this body, I want the applicant to feel like they get a true fair shot at every step along the process. And that would just be my big concern for them is that do they feel like that they got a fair, unbiased planning commission recommendation, and then they get their shot with the city council. And so, that I just think that there's a good division of responsibility there.
Mayor, may I ask a question of staff? So, Kim, you've been around a while, so have I guess. In the past, years ago, the city did have a council member that was over the planning commission. What was his role in that?
I think it changed a little bit over the years. Originally, it was as somebody who could relay information, but I think because of the nature, and even in the state code, I think they're intended to be separate bodies. We don't want somebody from the council the planning commission might feel like there's undue influence on them. So I think we've tried to purposely keep that separated, and I think we'd want to continue to do that. Would be from maybe even a legal standpoint that because the premise that the reason the planning commission exists is that they're an independent body. They provide recommendations outside of any other influence other than public input as they hold public hearings. So anyways, I think that's why we discontinued that, was just so that there was no influence from the council. They get their kind of bite at the apple, so to speak. Then those action items come to you for your final decision.
Okay. I do know other cities have that, and I know we used to, but I get that. So. So am I hearing that do you want more time? Is that consensus?
It'd be great to get the
Okay.
scheduling information.
Yeah, and I just have some more questions about some of them, but I don't know if we want to get into it now or at the future date. That's fine with me.
If it's something that requires us to do research, maybe
It might be good to know.
it might be good to know now, or not. I guess that's up to you.
Well,
but,
I'm looking at the municipal code committees. These are all appointed by the mayor. Is that what I understand?
yes,
Pretty
Yes,
much all of these. Okay.
yes, they are.
So looks like there's an opening in the park.
Yeah, some of those we're still working on updating.
Okay.
Some of those terms we know have expired, and we were just kind of waiting to see what you guys decided to do with some of the positions. And then once kind of all the assignments are made, we can catch up on what we need to do with the mayor's appointments.
Okay, and I'm just wondering who golfs here.
I mean, I was captain of the golf team
Okay.
in high school, but
I'm
Golf
pretty
well,
sure you
or
I don't. I do top golf.
Ryan Wood golfs.
I'm sure Ryan's much better than me, though. So
Pretty sure Ben's golfs weekly.
Tisha, can I ask you a question? So on the ones that are established by code, the mayor appoints those. So is that something we discuss as a council, or do we let the mayor decide?
Yeah, so that's kind of up to you and the mayor to decide how you want to make those appointments. Every mayor that I've worked with has done it differently.
Okay.
But at some point, I think the code requires, maybe, Ryan can answer of that.
Typically, anytime the mayor has appointment power, whether it expressly says it or not, it's kind of implied that it's with the advice and consent of the city council. So unless there's something in bylaws or, that says differently, but I think that's generally the pattern that we've followed.
Okay. And these are things that would take a formal vote then?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like I never got the formal vote, so I'm wondering if I actually.
And again, maybe
supposed
there's
to be
a
there.
specific one you have in mind that doesn't. It's just like, hey, who wants to do this? Okay, the mayor appoints them.
Yeah, a lot of it
And it
depends on
hasn't
the.
been.
Yeah, a lot of it depends on the committee's bylaws,
Yeah.
and especially if it's a separate committee, we don't always have access to those bylaws, so it's easy for those to kind of fall through the cracks sometimes. But yeah, like I know we need to catch up on yours, Michelle, with the Hutchings Museum, assuming that you stay on that committee. That's one that we need to clean up. So there is like a lot of cleanup that we need to do.
Okay. And since we're here talking about the board things, for the disclosure, the conflict of interest disclosure, my understanding is that we need to disclose that we serve even on non-paying boards. And that's why I want to make sure I'm official. Do I, disclose it?
Yeah, you can disclose it. You can also submit an amended report at any time as well. So just kind of disclose what you have, what you're doing right now. Even though maybe you're not officially appointed, you are connected to that board still. So I would still disclose it.
Okay.
And then after these assignments are made, if you want to submit an amended report with those assignments, you can.
And then are there other boards that would need that to include that as well on disclosures? Like, probably the mayor.
I think that's why it's important to have that distinction between the liaison and the board member, because I think for council, it's only the Hutchings Museum that you're actually on the board. So
Yeah.
it's like the Arts Council, the Historical Society, you're not on the board. You're not appointed to the board.
Well,
You're just a liaison.
Jordan River Commission, okay, this is
Yeah,
why
that
we need
might
more
be-
information. That's voting, they're voting on
That one is
budgets, so.
voting.
So that one would be too.
So I think that
We
information
can
would be great to
clarify all
have.
those up, yeah.
Okay. So let's postpone this discussion.
And that's probably a pretty good guide as to which ones need to be officially voted on.
Mhm.
Like if the mayor's appointing a board member, then that probably requires the official, the formal advice and consent of the council, where that's just a liaison. You can just probably decide between yourselves who wants to fill that role. It doesn't require a vote. So.
Yeah. And a lot of the committees or boards will reach out to us and say, we require that you have this passed by resolution. And so, yeah, we can make a lot of these updates, and maybe if we have time during the budget retreat, we can have more discussion.
Okay.
Can I one more question, and then I'll wait till the budget retreat. For under other committees, and at the top of some of them it says fiscal impact. Can you explain that? Where some, like Cultural Arts Council says 70,000 a year.
Right, yeah. So fiscal impact, some of these committees, even though they're a 501c3 like the Arts Council, we do the city does make a donation to help support them. So in the case, so that's not the case with every committee. So like the CIA, the Roundup Rodeo Committee, the city doesn't make a monetary contribution to that 501c3, but a lot of the other 501c3s, the city does.
Thank you.
Okay, we will postpone until we hear we have time.
So will you put together that list, and then that'll help, I think, us start reaching out and getting those assignments made. Thank you.
This was helpful. Thank you.
Okay, item 3.3, 1900 South right-of-way presentation by Mr. Kinnison.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Let's see what's going on. Can you hear me okay? Tisha, can you help me present? Good evening, Mayor and Council. We've been asked to present some information related to the 1900 South or the Pony Express Parkway corridor.
Hey, Brad.
Yeah.
Would you mind moving that cord up that's in front of the screen?
Oh, is it really?
Just have it behind. Thank you so much.
I was going to wait for the break and just.
I know. It was like driving me crazy.
Perfect. Well, so I'll try to keep things brief. I know you have just a limited amount of time, but let me go ahead. So just so you're aware, so I've sat on the MAGTAC committee for 17 years since I've been here at the city, and we generally every 2 years we have an opportunity to ask for more money for roadway and or active transportation projects. That round of funding is coming up again this year. But this project, the Pony Express Parkway Extension project, was, we requested funds for this project in 2022. Just to give you a quick idea where this is, as shown on the map, it's this section that's shown in orange, which extends 1900 South, which now is kind of more being called the Pony Express Parkway because Pony Express Parkway extends all the way into Eagle Mountain. Anyways, that would extend from on 1900 South from Center Street in Lehi and until about 700 West and American Fork. This is the area that was conceptually approved. The area shown in yellow, this yellow dashed, we show currently that our roadway would end at the approximate location of the extension of the Vineyard Connector, which is a UDOT funded. It's a project to be funded by UDOT and constructed by UDOT. So I'll just go on. I just wanted to give you a little bit of history. First of all, this roadway has been planned in the city for many, many years. It first showed up on the master plan, transportation plan in 2001, so 25 years ago. Again, like I mentioned, in the spring of 2022, seeing the need to make some progress on this project, we requested $6 million worth of Utah County Corridor Preservation funding from MAG and for Utah County, and that was approved. That same year, we proposed, as part of our funding request that year, the design and construction funds for that project. $12.69 million were granted in that fall. And those funds are typically not available for 3 to 4 years. And so we knew that they were able to we could start using them in 2026. Just to kind of give you an idea what that cross-section looks like, as part of our concept plan, we proposed to purchase the entire right-of-way for a 5-lane cross-section. But because of financial constraints, we have to limit our asks with MAG in order to be able to get projects. And so in this case, we asked for a 105-foot right-of-way road, but it was to be designed and constructed only as a 2-lane roadway. That roadway would be widened to 3 lanes when we come to intersections. So it's a 2-lane pioneered road with widening at intersections. We've done this in the past. We did Ashton Boulevard was the same way. We pioneered the road. 2300 West was the same way also. Between 3rd and 9th, it was a road that we brought in. So just to give you an idea, the funding that we receive from MAG, the city pays 6.77%. Because this, if you look on this map again, this project is pretty much equally split 50-50 between Lehi and American Fork. So we entered into an agreement with American Fork that we would split those funds. So in essence, our Lehi's responsibility is about $430,000, and American Fork's is the same. Just moving on, because we could not actually spend funding until 2026, we sought ways to do as much as we could possibly. We worked with Timpanogos Special Service District, and because they're currently in the process of expanding their sewer line, which runs much along the same corridor, they were willing to pull funds forward and pay for the wetland study. So we coordinated with them. They paid for the wetlands delineation study, which was ultimately approved this past December. We also couldn't move forward with corridor preservation funds until we have kind of an approved corridor through the Corps. But like I said, we do have that now, and so we can move forward. Also, we began in the fall of last year our botanical evaluations, which evaluates for threatened and endangered species of plants. That's a botanical evaluation. In particular, this plant here is the ladytress. The evaluation of that plant, it only blooms every 3 years. And so we started that evaluation last fall. And the evaluation that they came up with is they didn't see any evidence of that flowering plant, but they have to wait for the other 2 years to confirm that that's the case. So those evaluations will continue. I'm going the wrong direction, sorry. Just to kind of also give you a history, knowing that this funding was coming due, that we could start spending the money. Last summer, we worked with Utah County. This will be Utah County funding, so it's administered through MAG, but that funding comes through Utah County. And we brought a contract to the City Council in June for that $12.69 million, I think it was. So that came in June, was approved. Then we also worked with American Fork, and because we're essentially managing the project, but they're paying for half of the cost. So we had to have an interlocal agreement with them, and we signed that, or the council signed that back in August. We're currently moving forward to select a qualified design and environmental engineer. As we do that, we go through a process to determine which engineers are qualified. We expect to have that engineer selected by March and bring a contract to you to start that design. Essentially, we can start up to $1 million worth of design now, but the construction money follows later. We can't actually start with construction until 2027. Just giving you a little bit of information, that's some recent information that's happened, some recent things that have happened. I guess that doesn't show up very well, but you see these areas shown in red. That area shown in red is all located within Saratoga Springs. Saratoga Springs has also received funding from MAG to widen 1900 South or Pony Express Parkway to 5 lanes. Just a month ago, the mayor sat in his MPO meeting, and they were approved for 5 lanes. That was an extra $2 or $3 million that they requested to widen to 5. So they did receive that request or that extra money. So they're going out to bid within the next month to start construction within their section. They are intending to take 2 years for that construction. So within this year and next year. So by the end of next year, we expect that they will have 5 lanes up to their boundary, which is the Loch Lomond subdivision. We've worked with our streets department. We currently have enough pavement in this smaller blue section here, which is another quarter mile worth of property. We have enough pavement with currently that we can, we'll probably go in and chip seal the roadway and then repaint it so that we'll have 5 lanes also, at least within the blue section. Yeah, go ahead.
How much then would be left of Lehi that would then not be the 5 lanes then? What's the...
So the remaining section is this section that's kind of highlighted in this little yellow bubble here. That section was not included as part of the concept plan. However, I worked with MAG and Utah County this week, and they're willing to extend our contract to just do design and right-of-way as part of the same design. So we can essentially purchase the right-of-way and do the design for that extra, I think it's about 900 feet. So we would have the design and right-of-way for the entire roadway cross-section as part of this contract.
Thank you for doing that. That's awesome. I don't want to cut you off. Do you have more questions?
No, that was my thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm having heart palpitations about
Yeah.
Saratoga Spring coming through with 5 lanes and then filtering in through our neighborhoods. So I'm glad to hear this.
Yeah, and I know that's not an easy thing to do, so thank you for doing that.
Yeah, sure.
I just want to kind of repeat back to you to make sure that I'm following
Sure.
correctly. So the corridor preservation, it was done for 5, but we're only going to build 3 initially, and similar to 2300 West, at some decade or 2 down the road, we can come back to widen it to 5, but we do have the corridor preservation for 5.
That is correct. As
Okay.
part of this project, we will purchase the right-of-way for the entire 5-lane section. But it was too much of an ask to ask for $35 million from MAG back in 2022.
Yeah.
Quite honestly, I thought it was what we did is we kind of pooled our resources, American Fork and Lehi. This was the only project that we proposed in 2022 because we felt that strongly about it. And so we were awarded that project, plus we received the extra $6 million in corridor preservation.
So they will still funnel down into 3, but we'll have the right-of-way for 5.
It actually funnels down into 2.
And then
It's-
at the intersections, it's 3.
wherever we have an intersection, we'll
Okay.
widen it out to get 3 lanes, just so we have turn lanes.
Okay.
And where are the homes that have come into the right-of-way space that we did not preserve? I think there's, 10?
Oh, I'm sorry. 10 home. So all of the homes. So this is the Spring Creek. So can you see my mouse right here? The Spring Creek subdivision, which sits right here. This roadway is below the Spring Creek subdivision. There are no homes that I am aware of that would need to be removed or anything. There are some homes in this yellow section that we would be purchasing their frontage to widen the road, but there are no homes that I know of that would be removed as part of this construction.
Okay, that's good to know, because my understanding was that there was a section right at the border of Saratoga and Lehi where it was pretty obvious, at least on imagery, that there was right-of-way preserved in the Saratoga side, and then the Lehi homes were much closer. So I didn't know if that was still, if that requires eminent domain, or if there's enough space to squeeze in.
Let me
5 lanes.
bring over my Google Earth that I can kind of zoom up on this a little bit better. So the homes within, so you are correct in that there's a bigger space. You can see within Saratoga, there's this wider space right here. So Saratoga is bringing in a cross-section that's wider than ours, has more landscaping, and also has bike lanes. So for the roadway itself, just the travel lanes for 5 lanes, it looks like the road's all taken apart here. It's because Timpanogos Special Service District came through and brought their sewer lane in. But essentially, we have enough room to widen the roadway, but the bike lanes or any trail infrastructure that we may choose to build along this section, we would have to do some work there, right? I don't know whether it would be homes. We need to decide what that cross-section would look like, whether we would just take the bike lanes to the back of the curb. Maybe we take out the planter strip and the curb and gutter and reconstruct it as a bike lane. I'm not sure. But most of the work that I'm talking to you about right now is just related to getting the vehicular travel lanes.
Okay.
So.
No, that's great to know. I, for one, wouldn't want to exercise eminent domain to put in bike lanes, but
right.
But I'm glad there's enough space, at least for the traffic.
Yeah, the road's already built at that width that we can stripe it for 5 lanes up until you can see where up until where the subdivision ends right here. And then, like I said, I worked with MAG in Utah County to get funding to purchase this property here and do the design.
That's great. Thank you.
So, Brad, we're a couple years out just doing the design on the remaining unbuilt section. Is there any way we can... do the 5 lanes from the get-go, or?
Oh, is it? Well, so in anticipation that you may ask me this question, I ran some quick costs as to what I thought it would be extra.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we're looking at, well, I have a slide here, right here. Okay. So I think the extra cost to do this is in addition, would be $15 to $20 million to just widen this section from our Center Street to American Forks 700 West. I personally see a few challenges with that. First of all, we already know that American Fork has some concerns with how this road ties into their city. They're worried about it tying in. Everyone knows that their second south, which is the road that runs just south of the park and ride, is in severe repair, and the mayor has already expressed his concern with bringing all of this traffic to them. The other challenge is if we were to widen this to 5 lanes, where would the traffic go, right? I mean, it essentially gets that much more traffic, 5 lanes worth of traffic into American Fork. The good thing is that I spoke with UDOT as recently as just today. Their congestion analysis shows that their priority project for their next round of funding, which probably isn't until 2032, 2033, is to build out the Vineyard Connector, which is this line shown in yellow. They're already funded out with all the projects that they have, with the flex lanes on Pioneer Crossing, with the freeway on 2100 North and whatnot. They're funded out and committed out to 2031. So that's part of the challenge. If we bring a 5-lane section, where does all the traffic go? The other concern is, first of all, where would we get $15 to $20 million? It's not all just us, right? I mean, half of this would be American Fork having to somehow find the money. Thirdly, I'm just speaking just frankly because I sit on the TAC committee. One of the concerns that many of the members of the TAC committee have is that we love to fund the pioneering of roads, and the full widening roads is not nearly as it's not seen quite as strongly as a need, because they expect that when development comes in, it will widen the roads to the full build-out width. Now, this is a little bit different situation because it is kind of down near wetland type areas, and we may not see very much development there. But I'm just speaking it out loud from being a member on the committee. We often fund pioneered roads, and very very seldom fund full width roads.
Now, you said 2031, 2032 is when it would be funded, or when construction would?
I think that we're talking, I think I might even have one more. I think I wrote it right down here. I would believe that the earliest that we could actually see the Vineyard Connector built would probably be 2034, 2035, because they wouldn't be allocating funds until 2032. The good part is that they've determined that this is a priority for them, which I think Lauren can confirm. We haven't heard this from UDOT for a long time. It just has not been on their radar, but I think they're seeing it now because they see it as a alternative to I-15, which helps take traffic.
Yeah, that's really good news. And I think we have the benefit of time to potentially save money over those next 6 years, put money aside so that when we can time it with UDOT to build it at once, we have the benefit of time. Even though we'd all like it right now, we could potentially talk about that during the budget retreat.
The one thought I have on that is, with this being a regional road, I don't love spending just Lehi money to benefit the region. I'd love to see this coming from MAG or the state, but I think we should think through, maybe some of the costs.
That's a great point. So I guess the Vineyard Connector is UDOT funded, UDOT built, correct?
Correct.
But then you're talking about the MAG funding for the additional. Okay.
But we could.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
No, go. Please go.
I I mean, we could do, I mean, this was brought up during the campaign, but you know this, that other cities have prepaid roads and they got reimbursed by MAG, but that was once the funding was approved, right?
Yeah. The challenge is whether or not MAG would really approve funds, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Saratoga's they're doing the same thing, right? They have funding, but they also have approved projects. So they're using their funding to fund projects ahead of time, but they also know that there's a reimbursement mechanism there, whereas we would not have a reimbursement mechanism unless this were an approved project for 5 lanes.
So my concern, I get American Fork's concern that we would dump traffic into their city, but this is what's going to happen to us. I'm just looking at the map and, okay, a dead end, so where's all this traffic going to go? Right through our neighborhoods. I'm hoping we can find some creative solutions. I spoke to Cal Roberts the other night, and he has a bill, and we'll see if he says what means what he said.
Mm-hmm.
But he talked about a revolving loan, like the state would give cities a loan, hopefully very, very low interest or something.
Yeah, I do. Like I said, I do believe that's what Saratoga did.
Mm-hmm. And it could save money.
I could be
in the
wrong,
long
but
run.
I think it was to the tune of $100 million for them.
Oh.
But remember, they had projects that were approved,
right,
and that they could then be reimbursed from. In this case, the risk would be that we would be fronting the funding of
and
projects that we
that's the
may
thing.
not be reimbursed.
I would want to get it approved, even if it's years out.
Yeah.
Before, you're right, we would commit those funds or take that risk. So.
I mean, I guess
Go ahead. No,
the good thing is that with UDOT putting this Vineyard Connector as a priority, I think that they can push our legislature and to provide the funding for it. Because, I guess there's the possibility that they could get the funding earlier, but they did tell me we're funded out. We're all committed to 2031, but at least there's a positive there.
Yeah, what's the likelihood, like I'm thinking through another process of getting UDOT to claim this section as well? To make from the Vineyard connection point, but actually just pull it all the way out to the red line in Saratoga. And we could still participate to the funding we've received in partnership with UDOT, and they come in and bring in the rest.
I think it's a possibility, but I think the possibility is low. I think as cities along this entire corridor, we would be very anxious for UDOT to take over the entire Pony Express Parkway, but we haven't seen any kind of an indication that they're willing to do so thus far.
Okay, thank you.
One thing if they're not out until the 30s, into the early 30s, we may come back to MAG with this request. And once you get those tied together, we've never heard this on Vineyard before. That gives a whole different perspective to that committee.
Any other questions for Brad?
Just to make sure I have this right, when it comes to what you can actually paint to have the extra lanes, how much is that in miles, and then how much, as far as Lehi goes, our city, would we still be just in the 2 lanes?
We would have, I can go back, essentially we would still have one section that's incomplete. We would have this 900-foot section that's not striped for 5 lanes.
So we're just talking a 900-foot section for Lehi.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, and I love the direction this is going before. I know that's worked really well with Saratoga. I think that's something that's not as well known as that they're front loading, but once they have approval. Also, speaking of Saratoga and Eagle Mountain, because this is such an impact to them and far more on the side of Eagle Mountain, that they're like, we want to help however we can help get this done, including helping support the front load. So that's an opportunity too. I know this sounds like it depends on American Fork, and maybe we won't, with only the 900 feet, suffer as much of the trickle off from the 5 lanes, but I think it's going to end up being a bigger issue than, and it almost seems like it's a battle ram coming through. Like we're coming through ready or not, and this is what's going to move the needle much closer from, 2034 up. But I think there's definitely some things that we can try and
play with there.
And I think American Fork's feeling that RAM now, right? I mean, we felt it over the many years. I think to me the key, one of the biggest keys here is our expenditure. Remember, Saratoga is the same way, right?
Yeah.
They may be expending their own funds, but they're only committing essentially 7% of the funds to build very large roadways. We're the same way. We're getting essentially a $17 million project for $450,000. But if we front load it and don't have the reimbursement potential, then
yeah, I don't think any of us would want to do that, but ways that we could potentially put things in for approval, even though they may be further out than we typically do, just to be able to give us that ability to front load.
Yeah, one of the things that we've also done, I've worked with Jason. We've looked at whether we can get some federal funds to do this project too. Unfortunately, MAG does not support pulling federal funds into the Vineyard Connector because federal funds kind of taints their state funding and makes it hard for them to build their own projects. So we've tried that too. We've tried other funding mechanisms to bring federal funds in to do this, and it gets complicated when we're mixing state and federal funds.
One question, clarification.
Yeah.
You said we need $28 million to go to 5 lanes, but that's with American Fork. So if our portion, really, we would be looking at 10 million.
Yeah.
Really? Okay.
Yeah,
I just want to clarify that so everyone
that's
knows
to be
that's
split
kind of
between
the
two
number.
cities.
Okay.
Correct.
Sorry, the number I saw was 15 to 20.
Yeah, I was just accounting for inflation. And
Oh,
if it's
inflation,
built
okay.
in 5 years versus now.
No, that makes sense. I just thought maybe
I want to say 20 instead of 15, just in case we get there.
Yeah, those are definitely to be split between the two cities.
So really, Lehi would we're looking if we're half of that, that's 10-ish.
Any other questions? Thanks, Mr. Kinnison.
Thank you.
I would take a motion for a closed meeting to review purchase, exchange, lease, and real property prior to our meeting at 7.
I would like a restroom break also, if possible,
You
before
might get
7.
one. So we have a first by Councilmember Stallings, a second by Councilmember Freeman. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we'll recess.